want to thank you for being here. The leader of the opposition just concluded a press conference, and he described the oil and gas conference as pageantry and grandstanding. I actually think that he should really review the press conferences that he occasionally would have, because those conferences are perfect examples of pageantry and grandstanding. That's all we have there. No attention to details, no vision, no substance, just griping about everything that is positive in this country. But I guess he would not know better about what conferences of these sorts mean to a country. Now, this conference is privately organized, and it grows from strength to strength every year. And a large number of people pay a considerable sum of money to come and participate. And they do so because they think that the information shared at these conferences is very valuable to them in their business planning processes, and also they represent many opportunities for them to invest in this country. At this year's conference, we have an impressive array of diverse interests. We have some of the largest investment funds, and they're very quiet there at the conference because they're doing their research. They run multi-billion US dollar funds around the world, and they do their quiet research about investment prospects here. One of the biggest concerns of theirs, which was privately canvassed and brought to my attention, was how would the issue with Venezuela affect the business climate here. And most of them are leaving here convinced, based on what they saw at the conference, that ExxonMobil is pressing ahead with its investment programs, that is expanding its footprint in terms of investments here in Guyana, and that every person they've spoken with is now positive on Guyana. So I was extremely pleased, because when these funds read the international media, sometimes they get a different impression as to the Venezuela situation. Often the reports internationally start with Venezuela has resurrected a long-standing claim to Guyana's, 2/3 of Guyana's territory. These reports do not give the historical context that this matter was settled a long time ago, and they do not represent fully the strength of our case at the ICJ. And our case is a strong one, and it is for Venezuela now to prove that the 1899 award was flawed. And they cannot do that. They do not have a shred of evidence. And that is why I believe they've opted out of that mechanism, the ICJ, which would have revealed the paucity of evidence, in fact, the lack of evidence to support that spurious claim that they made some time ago. So they recognize now that it's highly likely that the ICJ would rule soon if Venezuela doesn't present its memorial, and that the ruling will be favorable to Guyana because they cannot make a case that the 1899 award is flawed. And so this is all happening in the sidelines of the conference. You get an opportunity to talk to a number of people, not just people who are investing and who shape opinion globally, but also to the media. The president did several interviews with the international media. I did interviews with Bloomberg, Reuters, and several other international media groups. And even if they're not repeated, or the substance of the interview is not carried fully, at least on background, they have a lot of the information. So future reporting can outline more of the nuances of Guyana's position on issues like the border matter, on gas strategy, on issues of contract renegotiation, etc. They have all of those information on the background. So the conference is not about pageantry. It's not about just the speeches that are made there. It's not, of course, I'm proud of some of the pageantry. We can do this now because we have things to be proud of. But it is a conference reflecting substance, and a lot of serious work is done there. The people, if you talk to them, the exhibitors at the conference, they're constantly tying up arrangements and making deals with others. This is private sector to private sector, not private sector to government. Private sector to private sector deals running into hundreds of millions of dollars are being made at this conference and conferences of this nature. There is a link up between lots of local people and foreign companies who are looking to come here. So the local people there are exploring partnerships. Norton will not understand this because he's never accustomed to playing in the big league. You know, he's a little leaguer. I've always said that. And so he only thinks about pageantry, etc. To get the kind of attention from the Prime Minister of India sending a message to this conference, to the large number of people, former heads of state, current prime ministers coming here to talk about the future of Guyana and also sharing their thoughts as to how different sectors can evolve, is a credit to our country. So to reduce all of this to pageantry is typical of the opposition. But as I said before, one place where nothing serious happens is his press conferences. And that therefore should fall under the definition of pageantry. He has this, Mr. Norton, although he claims it's pageantry, he then quotes some of the leaders who spoke. And he says, for example, Prime Minister Rowley called for cooperation in oil and gas sector, and the PPP ignores these opportunities. The President of Suriname called for energy integration, and the government has done nothing in line with the call. He says that Prime Minister, former President of Colombia, Mr. Duque, mentioned about conditional cash transfers, and we are doing nothing about that. So, again, here, he ignores all the positive things that these leaders have spoken about Guyana, the momentum in Guyana, the commendation for the government's stewardship of the direction in which we are going and addressing very complex interrelated issues. He's ignored all of that and picked a single line from the presentations to support his arguments. Now, if he had listened carefully, he would have seen that when we explain the development of the larger project, the gas to energy project, which we outline in great detail as to how we are approaching it. The energy strategy, yesterday in my presentation I did that. The gas strategy, basically how we're working on that, but moving in parallel to identify a core investor that can work with Exxon to move the project along. So Exxon has moved because of our insistence from saying they need to reinject all the gas to saying now we're seriously considering identification, appraisal of the gas, how much resources we have. We want to work towards a project. So we have had movement from Exxon. We now in the process of selecting a core investor to work with Exxon on this project, a core investor that can push Exxon even further to move faster, as we said, on monetizing the gas because of this narrow window of opportunity we have, because the world has now accepted gas as a transitional fuel. So, and of course, all of this overseen by the government, encouraged, supported, pushed by the government. Many countries cannot do so at this time. So Prime Minister Rowley has argued that we can potentially, he said, we can take the gas in Trinidad and Tobago because their production of gas now has dropped by almost 50% of what it was in 2010. Trinidad's production of gas. Their oil production has been declining from about 70-something thousand barrels a day in, say, 2015 to now about 54,000 barrels per day. So they need more gas. They're doing some of their own exploration and they potentially have some developments in the future, but they need more gas now. So and then in Suriname's case, Total is still examining the commercial viability of a development there. Could be oil and potentially gas. They only after the declaration of a commercial viability, which most people anticipate may happen this year, that they will make an investment decision whether there's a project maybe by the end of the year or next year. So they have no decision at this point in time whether they will have a project, a gas project or an oil project in Suriname. So we held out, when I spoke, I held out the possibility that we will examine both our approach to maybe moving gas to Trinidad versus processing the gas right in Guyana, bringing some onshore for industrialization purposes, and possibly on a floating platform doing LNG for exports. And if Suriname comes on stream, whenever that comes on stream, we will also examine integration. But right now, they don't even have a project. We can't wait for that project decision to be made in Suriname to move with our project. And then we have to explore the commercial, everything has to be done on the basis of feasibility study and the commercial, how much it costs. So you would have to assess, would it be better to process your gas right at site on a floating LNG platform than moving it hundreds of miles to Trinidad and Tobago? All of these things have to be determined not on the basis of desire or goodwill or good intention, or else they will not be financially feasible. They have to be determined on the basis of what is good for our country and what will be viable in the marketplace. So it is this schoolboy's kind of approach that Norton has to assessing these sometimes very complex issues. And Duque was speaking generally. Duque was very high in praise of Guyana, if you read of his presentation. And he was very positive about Guyana, and he spoke about overall. So conditional cash transfers, conditional, not across the board cash transfer, not universal income, as some are calling for, APNU has been calling for. Conditional cash transfers have already been taking place in Guyana when we target pensioners or the people living with disability or our young people for this, the kids in school. We've already started introducing conditional cash transfers to vulnerable groups. So, again, Norton missed the bus. He misses it all the time. He says, no report on the GDF crash so far. And he could have easily asked what has happened. And he would have been told that the black box was sent up in December to the US. If he had only called civil aviation and found out, and they have scheduled a readout of the black box for next month, March, and they've invited our representatives to be there at the scheduled readout of the black box. And at that time, we will find out what took place in the helicopter hopefully from the recording of the black box. So that should be easy to do that. He spoke about, and they put this in their press release, about the generators that we imported, that they're all a waste of taxpayers' money, and we need to come clean on the generator. When we were in opposition, before I went to a press conference, at least if I had an idea, I'll try to confirm things. And he probably has such a bad relation with people, nobody wants to speak with him. But if he had asked, we now imported about 28 megawatts of power because of APNU's failure to build a hydro, do the gas to energy project or anything else. They only bought, after they lost office, this 47 or 50 megawatts of power. They paid for it, and we had to end up installing it. We still have trouble with some of the units, But that's nothing. They did nothing basically in the 5 years. So now we have to, whilst we're working on the gas to energy project, we have to bring in emergency power. We decided to buy the units. When we went out to tender, we had a bid either to sell us power for the few years or to look at or to supply units. When we look at the capacity charge that we will have to pay if someone were to sell us power for the number of years, it would be prohibitive in the period after the gas to energy project comes on stream, because we'd still have to pay the capacity charge and not the energy charge on the units that we practically rent. So we decided to buy these units that could be redeployed once the gas to energy project comes on stream, because there are several units at the capacity of 1.5 megawatts. That's the size of the units. We can redeploy them around the country to the areas that are not part of the interconnected the grid. So the completion date was February for the installation of this. It's been delayed by a month to March, but about 10 megawatts of the 28 have already come on stream, and over the course of this month and by the first week, that was what GPL said, of next month, all 28 megawatts should be in the system. So that should be easy. And some of the delays were caused by procurement difficulties, like getting the transformers in on time when they had this issue with the Panama Canal, you know. So it might be delayed for a few weeks, maybe maximum a month, but already 10 megawatts of the 28 megawatts are supplying the system, and the rest should come on stream in a couple of months. This is a simple thing. He raised it into a major, imagine hosting a press conference without doing your research. He said again, the gas to energy will be a failed project. Now, and because it might be delayed a bit. So you heard at the energy conference all the presentations on the gas to energy project. They're in the public domain. All he had to do was to spend 5 minutes in listening to the presentations. He would see that Exxon said their component are on time. The pipeline would be here on time. The transmission system, that is to evacuate the power, that's on track, and that we will have possibly a 3 months delay because Exxon did not hand over the site until about 3 months later than they should have handed over the site to the contractors because of that. And Exxon was in charge of preparing the site. And so there would be a delay, possibly about three months. That's why to be safe, we said second quarter of the 2025. Now, it could be the first day of the second quarter. But the overall project, remember, it's a combined cycle. So about 220 megawatts will come in at that date. But the combined cycle will be on time because that's scheduled for the end of 2025. That will take you up to the 300 megawatts. So this is a simple thing to talk about. And then there is something that he spoke about at the press conference. I noticed quite a bit. Mahi Paul had to weigh in, everybody, Low, etc. from the report from my staff. They don't put that in the written version of their press release. So it's important to watch what is happening in the press conference. So my staff was tracking it. And you know, Hamilton Green earlier in the week made a very outrageous statement that they should continue to rig to stay in power. Here is a former prime minister of this country, one who under APNU they went to parliament and gave him a special package of concessions, money, all kinds of services for services that I don't think he ever gave this country, but he was treated preferentially and said they must rig elections, PNC, to keep the demons, bastards, and some other adjective that he used for the PPP. That we're demons, we're bastards, and everything else. And they must keep rigging. This is at a PNC conference. Nobody challenged him there. And in this country, where is the outrage again from the civil society? Just imagine the PPP, say Sam Hines were to say something like that. They would kill Sam. All of the people will come out from the red thread, blue thread, green thread, every thread in the country will come out. TIGI will be issuing a statement. Starbuck News will have an editorial on it. Kaichor News will go into orgasmic rapture about this and to cuss the PPP. It's a serious matter. Here is a former prime minister saying we should continue to rig to stay in power. This is, we must do this. We must rig elections. It is an acceptance that they have been rigging elections in the past, and that not any contrition about it, not any remorse about it, no attempt to reform past behavior. But let us not just forget that we just tried it again. What this is a foolproof way in the future. That should be our future policy for gaining and staying in power. This is a major bit of news, and it just went out the window because it's done by the PNC. They always get a free pass on their failed economic policy, their failed projects, the massive corruptions that they engage in, their lack of vision, the outrageous statements, their racism. They always get a free pass in this country from media and from civil society. A free pass. So at today's press conference, if you thought that was just an aberration, an outlier statement, it is not so. It's core PNC value, because at today's press conference, they doubled down on it and tried to excuse it. So Norton said, when I listened to what he said if. They left out the word if from it. He is not condemning, saying outright about what Hamilton Green said. He said, if we were rigging, then we should continue to rig. No, the guy is saying we should continue to rig. But he doesn't say that. He tries to excuse it. Then Mahipal said, as a central executive member, he was taken back. He looked at Hamilton Green's recording, and the PNC has always embraced free and fair elections. this Mahipal needs to be institutionalized for making a statement like this. Only a lunatic would say something like this. Something that's proven to everyone. And he said there's enough evidence about elections 2020, and we know who the real riggers are. The PPP are squatting in office and votes that are not valid. This is the man who supported Lowenfield to declare the 175,000 PPP votes invalid. And the CCJ said he is taking powers that he doesn't have onto himself. There's nothing, he can't do that. The CCJ ruling pointed this out. And he said about series of other anomalies that took place. Now we had a commission of inquiry that concluded that the PNC, International Commission of Inquiry, the PNC tried to rig APNU, AFC, tried to rig the last elections. We've had statements like Katiuj, Ramjatan, APNU trying to justify the stealing of the elections, trying to shift this to the PPP. We've had Norton himself saying he had statements of polls that proved they won the elections that they failed until now to produce. Not to us, not to the country, not even to the courts. They've had several of their cases in the court struck off because they're just so stupid, ridiculous. No sensible person would even file a case like that. And they keep living in this mindset. They're not going to even accept that. And they're Elton Lowe or Elson Lowe. I don't know who is it. It doesn't matter. It's some Lowe. The Lowe guy said, oh, we're calling for biometrics now. Shifting it. As though biometrics caused them to lose the last elections. And they've always, every time they've lost elections, the biometrics, the voters list padded, etc., they ignore the facts. The facts are that 660,000 people were on the voters list, 460,000 voted the last time. They ignore the facts. So this is a major issue. I'm hoping that more and more people will condemn this. Don't treat this statement by Hamilton Green as passing. A passing reference to what happened in yesteryear. This is core PNC philosophy. Today, it's alive and well in the PNC. It's part of their DNA. It is part of Mahipal is justifying it. Norton is justifying the rigging. They're lying to the people of this country in the face of a mountain of evidence to the contrary that any sensible person can see, assess, and understand and conclude that they rigged the election. They're trying to deny, as though it's in an alternate universe, that the Commission of Inquiry has investigated this and found them to be the riggers, that the Caribbean Court of Justice has ruled on this, independent bodies, and still they persist with a lie. What else will they not lie about? How can you believe anything that they say? That is the crux of the matter. It goes to the credibility of anything that APNU says. APNU says. So at the same event, I gather, or it may be a second event, another event, Nigel Hughes made a speech. And there is much about, from what is reported. I've not read the full speech, but from much that is reported, when he said that we have a commitment to mutual respect and good governance, all built that on the recognition that we're in the same boat and we can only go forward if there is cohesive paddling in the direction collectively agreed upon. I can subscribe to that. I believe in that. That's what we've always had as our philosophy, pushing in the People's Progressive Party from the time it was formed in the 1950s to fight for independence for this country and freedom for our people, all of our people. And if you look at our philosophy throughout and our actions, we've always tried to bring people together, move our country forward. So we can share that. But our views depart when you, based on the arguments to support this view. It is, we have made it clear that the parties are very, very different. The two political parties are different, starkly different. He tries to bring us together just to hide, I think, some of the major deficiencies of the policies that the PNC has been pursuing. So he says all sides are to be blamed, and therefore we have to have some Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So let me distill this. First of all, the people of this country have lived together over centuries now. They've worked together. Even in tough times, they've avoided extreme action, like recently in 2020, even when they were pushed by political forces. And I mean APNU in this case. Like, there are a large number of people who voted for APNU who might have wanted APNU to win, who might have even believed the 3 attempts that they tried to swear in Granger illegally, believed in those, but who, when they started examining the evidence available, concluded that they're going to wait on a process, the courts, and the recount, and concluded that APNU lost the elections. And even in the face of provocation and support for their party, they did not take extreme action. They were not misled. So you can't rub the mud on the people of this country. Both sides are committing heresies and they need to do this. It's the political parties you have to come to now. Who's been pushing to divide our people and the ones who are trying to bring people together, the political organizations. Now, you admitted to rigging elections, stealing elections. We don't have to, there's no equality in that. We never stole elections. We have a history of fighting for freedom in this country. And if you trace, I don't want to do it now, it'll take a long time, but I can trace the struggles from colonial rule to freedom from rigged elections. In the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, well, early 90s, and then again in the 5 years we're in opposition. We're not equal in that regard. We don't have to confess to the same thing to come together. APNU needs to go into the confessional box and agree that they rigged elections historically and commit to democracy in the future, because it's only through democracy that we can paddle cohesively together, as he's arguing, in that way, when there is freedom in our country. They're just contrary to, in fact, they're going the other direction. Rather than accepting what they did, they're now saying, no, 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 we didn't do that. In fact, saying we should do it again. That's the first point. Secondly, on economic policy making, we're not the same. At the end of their tenure, their 28 years in office, the per capita GDP of this country was $300. The wages and salaries of public servants, the average lower end was 25 to 30 US dollars. 25 to 30 US dollars. We didn't have food in this country. We didn't have medicine in the hospitals. A massive state of disrepair. The power situation, weeks without power. Without power, I'm talking about, not blackouts. Without power, we were declared uncreditworthy to borrow. People were fleeing this country. You look at the Caribbean Council of Churches, their report on Guyana, you would see where we are. That's your record. We're not the same. We didn't pauperize the people of this country through economic policies. That changed. They stopped doing housing, etc. That changed in the period we're in office. When our end point was 2015, after 20-something years in office, this country had already, even before oil, had already started changing radically. So we don't have the same sort of economic policies. We don't have the same sort of economic policy. I can go on that. Thirdly, on racism. You don't hear us every day. That's our only tool for mobilizing people. We're the only party that has attempted in this country to have across all the communities in the Guyana, we campaign and have a party that looks like the country across race. And we've succeeded in doing that more, and we are succeeding. The local government results prove that. We have party groups in almost every area in this country, even in APNU strongholds, party groups and party members. So by contrast, look at the APNU. Look at APNU. They make no attempt to do it. They don't even make an attempt to do it. And that's the only way we can paddle cohesively. If Nigel Lewis is concerned about that, is moving away from racism. And for him personally to reduce, because sometimes he does that, always reduces issues to race metrics, etc. But that's the policy of the PNC. So to say that both sides need to go to some truth and reconciliation. Why do we need truth and reconciliation? We know the facts. Who've been rigging, who've been trying to divide our people, who've pushing the racism. You need to move away from that. And that's what we said. Move away from racism. Accept that the condition under which we live in the future will be a democratic one. And we might have a basis to talk. But if you stick with those policies, there's no such thing. Nigel Lewis then goes on to talk about equality of participation. And what we are trying to do, we're trying to do an equality of opportunities. The Amerindian kids, rural kids, often didn't have access to education. Now through online programs, they may be able to get tertiary education right from their own homes. That's equality of opportunities. The oil and gas industry is based in Georgetown and Region 4. We're now trying to take opportunities to Linden, to other places, the part-time jobs. That's what we're doing. But we can provide equality of opportunities. We can't determine equality of outcomes. It's how people use the opportunity. If people go and study more and upgrade themselves, like teachers, and they get a master's or so, they get a higher pay. It's dependent on people individually. And it's not race. It's about people. It's all of our people. If you push hard enough, if you want to be a victim and complain that you can all the time, then you will become a victim. But if you have equal opportunities and you utilize them well, then you will make progress beyond the guy who wants to sit every day on his hands, who don't want to make the effort to study. It's equality of opportunities, not equality of outcomes that we can guarantee. In no society you have that. Even in the communist society that sought to, in the past, that sought to do that sort of thing. We're trying to create. So why do you think we're building 12 hospitals and upgrading all London and everywhere else? And they're spread all over the country, so everybody would have access to quality health care. That is precisely what we're doing. But somehow, the people like Nigel Hughes believes that every day we must go and I don't know what they want, basically, because it doesn't work anywhere. And they're not even clear about it. That we must do things by supermajority. Now, supermajority, we already have you look at it, I've dealt with this issue already, the supermajority. Look at the appointment of the Chancellor and Chief Justice. We changed the model from one where the President, after consultation with the leader of the opposition, would appoint, now to the opposition leader having a veto power over the appointment. So we have not been able to appoint to the two top posts in the judiciary because of this in the past. And that is the issue. When you see the gridlock in Parliament, and it's not a gridlock based on a technical assessment of the subject matter. It's based on political posturing. You would never be able to do anything in this country. You can't pass a budget, you can't do anything else. And then direct election of MPs. Mr. Hughes is forgetting that we had constitutional reform. I don't want to go through all the features. We had constitutional reform under the People's Progressive Party. We're utilizing the same model now that we promised in our manifesto. We've just appointed the Constitutional Reform Commission, 5 from the opposition, 5 from the government, or the government, well, PPP in this case, and another 10 from civil society. That's the exact model that we used in the past, and we had some of the most profound changes in our constitution than anywhere in the world. Anywhere in the world, I can defend that. We put in place several mechanisms that countries don't have, not to just to support or give further rights to people, but mechanisms to enforce those rights, like the Ethnic Relations Commission. So Nigel Hughes again called for disaggregated data to join to determine policy making. That's precisely what happens in government. But when the ERC disaggregate the data on house lots under the PPP and employment in the public sector, and it showed there was no racism. But they're not satisfied with the disaggregated data then. They would choose individuals to say somebody is discriminated against, but would not report it to the ERC. That was the mechanism through the last constitutional reform that we did in Guyana to ensure that people could get justice if they believed they were discriminated against. So it's all very convenient, and it may sound erudite, it may sound very lofty and well-meaning, but it's really for people who are not familiar with our history and don't know about the changes that we have had, and who are not in government, who don't know about the practicality of implementing some of these sorts of things, and the experience we've had with APNU, with issues like consensus. So it's a recipe for gridlock. It's a recipe for gridlock. And we can do a lot of those things which may sound nice on a piece of paper, but it's meaningless in the context of the negative politics that we have up now. I want for all the naysayers and all of those very bright people who have been advising us, etc., and the gratuitous advice from abroad and Kaichor News, etc., to look at, again, at the IMF report and the report of the Deputy Managing Director of the fund, because they study the numbers more in greater detail. And they have a ton of specialists all around the world, the top specialists on macroeconomic policies, etc. And this is what he said again: I congratulated the authorities on the unparalleled economic expansion. Guyana is in a position today, let me go past all of that, and the benefits of rapidly increasing our revenues due to the hard-won gains from implementing reforms and adjustment over the years. The plans put in place by the authorities and the strong progress are benefiting the entire population through better healthcare and educational programs, housing policies, energy and transport infrastructure. More importantly, these plans are also providing current and future generations with entrepreneurial and work opportunities through very strong economic growth and a more diversified and climate resilient economy. I can go on and you talk about, you'd see the other areas. I don't want to quote all of it. You can read this. But they've examined all of these. And they share, most people who understand it, share our view. Yesterday, I had to deal with it again about if you love people and you want them to get benefits, you can't love them in the abstract. If you want our people to progress and get wealthy individually in the future, it can't happen in the abstract. It has to happen in the context of sound policies. Because if we screw up policy-wise, we do what APNU want. We eat up every cent now, we don't invest in two things, in resilience, as I said before, and diversification. If we don't do that, resilience and sustainability, thank you. If we don't do that, then what will happen is that the very people we love in the future are going to suffer from it. Like some countries have seen a growth in income, the middle class, and then things practically collapse. It's not sustainable, and we're not into that. We're not into that. And as tough as the decisions will be, like when we point out to the teachers, like last time I saw some article in the Kaichor News saying, oh, Jagdeo pointed out to the per capita spending per child, but he didn't say about a significant part of the spending is on maintenance and rehabilitation. But I did say that here. I did say that because it's comparable. In a private context where annually the cost of educating a child based on average rate of pay will be about $300,000, the private provider has to provide the building, and everything else, and maintenance and electricity and everything else. And that's enshrined in the fees. In this case, when we took out the 135 billion, we took out 10 billion from it for tertiary education, for UG and gold. And we take the remaining 125 billion and divide by the number of students we have at primary, secondary, nursery, primary, and secondary. We came up with 600 and something thousand, nearly 700,000. But it includes spending on capital and maintenance and the children, because I pointed out that we can't spend all on salaries. Our wages bill to the education sector has grown by 62% since we took office. But it's grown in a differential way because of hiring more people and also giving higher increases for the the, the teachers who have more qualification. And that's where we're headed. I said strategically. But we're also spending on upgrading classrooms, work environment, that the teachers and the students benefit from, the same teachers. But they miss the whole point again. And this is the whole, you have to keep explaining. And I pointed out that the commitment of the government, we've increased the education budget by 160% or so, 62% over the last 4 years. In the health sector, it has gone up by over 260% in 4 years from what it was in 2019 or so. 260% from 2019. Which country in the world you have seen that massive investment in that? And who are the hospitals going to benefit? Or better health care? Who would benefit from this? And it's all across our country. It will benefit our people, the people of this country. That's the investment that we're making. But we can't hand out all in wages and salaries. And we've explained this over and over again. There has been increases. We've come a long way. So this is something that's very important. I just like, because I'm sure Marcel would want to ask more about this, about the Qatari investment. But the editorial, green spaces versus hotel. So I was trying to get from Ramson before I came here, because I know when I met a group from Georgetown, nearly 500 people came at the convention center from all the areas in Georgetown. And we decided last year that there are 34 grounds that we're going to fix. So we got our engineers to go and identify all the grounds in the city. Every single ground, from Agricola all the way to Cummins Lodge. And we said, how many grounds do we have? And we're fixing all. And we started immediately. We said we're going to raise the grounds. We're going to fence the grounds if they're in state of disrepair. Some already have fence. We're going to put in lighting. The next phase is lighting in these grounds. Then we probably put in buildings, so you have a small building, maybe with facilities, public facilities. Then we possibly, for the bigger ones, we'd put a track around evening for people to walk in the grounds. 34 grounds right back in the communities. They had the green spaces, but they're overgrown. These green spaces are overgrown. So recreational facility in the city has been a priority. That's ignored practically by all. The editorial didn't mention a word about that the investment back in the communities in the city, the different wards, back where people don't have to come to the national park or go once a week to the GNS, once a year to the GNS ground for sports day. They can have on a daily basis recreational facilities right back in their communities, in West Ruimveldt, East Ruimveldt, North Ruimveldt, everywhere, Agricola, all the parts, every part of the city. That is being done. That's about green spaces. We've outlined our plan to do the walkways in the city for parking. We've started doing that. Planting trees, you've started seeing that along the boulevard by the Army compound, changing the entire landscape of the city. So that's being done. We have 86% of this country covered with forests. 86% of the country covered with forests. And we're one of the greenest countries in the world, the second highest forest cover in the world. And we're worried about green space. I remember that the Granger once flew to Green Mabaruma. He took 3 aircrafts to fly into Mabaruma to plant a tree and come back. And Mabaruma has lots of trees, if you know Mabaruma and the surrounding areas. Right, pageantry. This is the country that we live in. Second highest forest cover in the world. That is land mass to forest in the world. Their Kaichor News is worried, not Kaichor, Starbrook. Starbrook in this case is worried about a green space. So the city will be green. It will be greener and cleaner. And we need the buildings too. Because in each of these buildings, it seems as though we have to fight for every development project. The same questions that we had to face when I was president about the Marriott Hotel. It used to be a dump site. People used to build boats there. Everybody used to take stuff to dump, and they love it as a green space. The green dumping space in the city. Loved it to death. We cleaned it up. There's a hotel there now that's employing nearly 400 Guyanese who have jobs there now and are earning an income. The hotel is not going away anywhere in the world. The hotel is more valuable than when we built it now. Without it, we couldn't have had this conference now. In fact, the conference outgrew the hotel by far. By far, if you were there, you'd see how tight it was. And they would have loved us keeping that as a green dumping site for the city because it's green. A couple of trees were growing there. So here too, we're going through the same issue. The very same issue. If we don't marry development with the development of the city, etc. This city council, if you have a massive hotel, an international first 5-star hotel, over 400 rooms, the Marriott has significantly less, I don't know, 250 or something like that. Massive hotel. The conference facility there will be, the Marriott conference facility, that ballroom, is about 6,000 square feet. The conference facility here will be over 30,000 square feet. So that's the nature of what will have to happen in the future if our country is going to grow and deliver the high-paying jobs to our citizens. The high-paying jobs. We love to talk about Dubai and Qatar. I'll drive for 20 minutes down a highway in Dubai and not see a single tree. But people use that as a model. Some of the same people, not a single tree on the highway. Tall buildings, and they love that. And they would compare you with Dubai all the time, or Qatar. Here we just have one new hotel going up with plentiful green space in the city, etc. That will be a game changer too for the development. And we don't need only that. It will not displace the locals. You remember when we were doing the Marriott, Badal was opposed to it, the Badal. He said it will kill the Pegasus. He has expanded, and I think he will expand again in the future because there'll be need to do so. It's expanded now. It's come around with it because the cake gets bigger. People are looking at just eating a small cake, but when the cake gets bigger, it has room for growth. And this is the vision. We need 10 hotel. I see you smiling here. Bad choice of words, right? And this is what's going to happen in the city. And so I hope that people, they said, oh, we saw a now green Epping Avenue, Bel Air Park. To the government's credit, they are now rehabilitating it in the editorial. That's part of the 34. That's what we decided in the 34. They talk, what about Apnew's green space that they have next to the Coffee Square, the Durban Park? That's a real green space that they left us with, a tarmac and a decaying facility. But what bothered me first is that they said also the boardwalk. Now this boardwalk seems that the boardwalk has to be available for everybody. It's not a hotel's boardwalk. People do that all the time. It changes the landscape of the city. They'll be happy. You should be happy to have that. And that will be an open space. But where is the part where they said, when Jagdeo was asked about Vice President and given the assurance that no one will be barred from using it, when asked about the status of the lands for the hotel, he responded that based on the documents the government has their state lands. Right? The land was checked and these are public lands, he was quoted as saying. However, they then said, we reported that the lands along what is now Carifesta Avenue were granted to the city in 1887 by the estate of Quentin Hogg under the covenant of what they were to be used only for recreational purposes. One might have thought that the Lands and Survey Commission would have had this on record and would have so advised the president. Well, they did advise us. But they chose an unsubstantiated allegation from a mayor who has some old transports that he cannot read, who's been going around identifying lands all around in the city, and they've been trying to surreptitiously, through the council, they've been trying to surreptitiously sell these lands out. Now suddenly said this land belonged to them. They chose to elevate this in an editorial. I said, we have the documents. I said, we have the documents. They said, oh, they quoted him and said, this would not be right. Chose to believe a city council above what we said, and then they had mud in their face because the Lands and Survey put out a statement and pointed this out, that they couldn't even read the map, the city council. All they had was a little dam between the St. Stanislaus ground and the GT&T facility that they leased to a private individual. They don't own any of this. These are all under state control. But this here, so now we come to what would it be, people pay for it, and all of these issues now. And Kaichor News was worried about Qatar Hotel to get 10 years tax-free ride in Guyana. Every hotel getting a tax-free ride, every single, as though we are giving the Qatari hotel a special treatment. Every hotel, if you build, get a package of concessions, which doesn't change by individual hotels. They get a package of concessions. Do we have to fight for everything that's good for the people of this country? And from sources raising a lot of spurious things, as though they just want the place to be left with like a barren landscape, nothing happening nowhere, and then they will compare you to the countries that are happening. Oh, you have a nice hotel in Qatar, but you can't have a nice hotel here. It's horrible. The facilities are bad. Compare you, but then when you try to do something, they kill everything. Pour cold water on every single development initiative by using all these things. Oh, we love green space. We love green space. You should allow the canals to be overgrown, and then it will be green. Canals and stuff like that. Emission, next thing you hear, we're clearing the canals and disturbing green space in the city. It's this sort of thing. Not that people don't have a right to question things. They do have a right to question things, and they can easily get this information like from Go Invest. Rather than writing, all they had to do was to say, call us again. If the mayor went and gave the Stabroek News something. Just call the Lands and Survey and then write a proper editorial which says, we've checked it. We've checked, and the Lands and Survey has the map, they have an explanation, and what the City Council is saying is false. Is false, that they don't have that. I think I'll end there. Thank you. Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Kiana Wilbur, Culture News. Just a few questions. Dr. Jagdeo, at the energy conference, the government made an aggressive pitch for gas development, and you would have touched during your interview with Mr. Pascual, Carlos Pascual, about the assistance that government is getting from IHS on gas. I was wondering if you can elaborate on the role IHS will play in this, what's some of the advice you expect to get from them. And at a previous press conference, I had asked you about the role of our bilateral partners who have experience in gas. Can you say if we're leaning on them, any particular partners for this? Also on gas, has the government decided with Exxon whether the 7th project will definitely be one of gas, and if there's going to be a deadline for sanctioning and approving? Gas.
On gas, you want to go on?
Yeah,
right.
I can go to the others.
Give me all the questions.
No problem. Regarding the oil sector investments, we've seen that Frontier and CGX, they're getting a hard time with finding investors to work alongside them in the quarantine block. Is this something government is concerned about? And also for the auction that is still to be closed, based on the companies that we've seen, you have a few established companies as well as newcomers. I know that the government has said you're very strict on keeping the model PSA as is, but given that you have newcomers, is there any type of leniency that you plan to give with the newcomers so that they can be able to keep up with the same pace?
Yes, so let me start from the last question. So we launched the auction, the law consistent with what we promised in our manifesto, that we are not going to give out any contracts in the future on the same basis as in the past. So we made it clear that we're going to, all future blocks would be awarded by auction, or alternately, we would say when our national interests, like through bilateral partners. So when we launched the auction, we said that before we close the auction, we're going to give the bidders 2 documents so they're fully aware of the conditions in which they're going to be participating in the bid round. One was the PSA, and the second was a draft of the Petroleum Activities Bill. The PSA took longer to finalize than anticipated. We had lots of comments. We had a lot of back and forth iteration of several models, that's on the fiscal side particularly, to look at increasing our take, which moved from 2% royalty to 10% royalty, no tax to 10% tax, and reduction of 75% to 65% for cost recovery. Those were the key elements of it, the final elements. But we had to ensure that we, having such a fiscal model, allow us to remain globally competitive, given that there were a number of people trying to secure through bid rounds. Some 80 countries were going out through bid rounds, and there was a paucity of capital flowing into exploration globally, based on trends. Now, in fact, some of the oil majors were withdrawing from the market in terms of new exploration. So it took us a while. We managed to get the PSA done, and also with the law, we had a lot of back and forth. So that extended the timeline for completing the first licensing round. But we learned a lot of lessons too. We're learning because this is the first bid round. So the feedback we're getting, we made it clear at the beginning when Exxon, I was told that Exxon at a press conference said they may not participate because there are some onerous conditions. And I said, there'll be no change on the fiscal term, on the fiscal. We're not changing the fiscal at all. That position remains today. So what are the lessons we learned? We got a lot of feedback that the fiscal terms might be acceptable, the increased fiscal terms. But there were several other areas where the conditions were too tough. We had too tough a condition globally. And that is, I don't want to go through what they are now because at some point in time we can discuss these. If they become too onerous, that is where we may have to make adjustments. So what I said at the conference, we were hoping to get a feedback to, because they will determine future rounds, how attractive we are. And we have a number, the next round should be exciting because we may, by that time, get to 20%. In fact, we will, by October of this year, get the 20% of the block, of the Stabroek block, returned to the government from Exxon. And we already have some areas to our east that are available with us. So you'd have more excitement. But we don't want, because of the non-fiscal terms, to kill interest. And so we are looking at the feedback. But they said we have one of the toughest PSAs in the world now, based on not just the fiscal conditions, but the other conditions. So that's the feedback we're looking for. If there are, it will come to the cabinet. We'll look at what they are to see if they're a key determinant. The adjustments have to be a key determinant now to conclude these arrangements. And where there is a threshold beyond which we're not going to go, of course. So we're learning a lot now. We're learning a lot from the first bid round, not about policy, but from the market feedback. We're getting a lot of market feedback from them, what is competitive and what is not. But clearly on the fiscal side, we made it clear, no change to the fiscal regime. We are going to, the new fiscal regime will have 10% royalty, what I mentioned before, 10% tax, but you can't get that if you don't have a project too. And so we need to get the projects going. That is how we are approaching that issue.
Can I follow up before
yes,
you
go
to the, okay. Regarding the newcomers, the reason why I mentioned CGX and Frontier is because we've seen
No, I've not answered the CGX and Frontier yet.
Oh.
Question, I'm coming. That's the first question I answered, right? The second one, I'm coming to Frontier and CGX. So they have, on the other hand, given us assurances that they're going to secure partners. They have obligations according to the prospecting licenses that they have, and they have to meet those obligations. I don't know whether the new fiscal regime or the new PSA is a deterrent to them securing partners as yet. That's the feedback we're looking for. But so far, we have been given assurances that they've approached and they've had receptive ears from new partners. If this, as I said before, if this becomes a major issue, not only for CGX and the others in securing partners, but anyone else who's participating in the current auction or future auction, the non-fiscal terms, because the fiscal terms are cast already, then we're prepared to have a look at those. we're prepared to have a look at those. But so far, we've had the assurances. Some of them brought people to talk to me at the conference and say we're exploring with the partners, etc. So nobody has said to me, or I don't know if they said it formally to the ministry as yet, that we can't move forward because of the tough PSA that the government has put forward, that is a deterrent now to us securing investors in our projects. So we are keeping our thing. We have not had any discussion whatsoever on a seventh project. All that we are discussing now is the sixth project, which hopefully will be licensed by the end of the first quarter. Although they are seriously looking at the gas project now. So it could be, but we have not had discussion. Nothing to say, this is the seventh project on the cost bank. No, we have had no such discussion as of this time. The IHS market now has to take the document that we put in the public domain, the discussion paper, look at all the comments that we received. Then they have a huge set of expertise on gas, they know the international markets, etc., and pull together a high-level strategy. A high-level strategy because much of what will go into making a project has to be done by potential investors. So we can say in the high-level strategy, we want all the gas to come onshore for industrialization. The feasibility study may say the demand onshore, given the dynamics, you don't have a deep water harbor, so even if we process the gas onshore, we may have a difficult time in bringing the large vessels to take the end product out. Then we may need to do a combination of bringing some of the gas onshore based on established demand, domestic demand for industrialization purposes, as well as maybe demand from our neighboring partners, say Brazil, northern Brazil, or maybe Suriname. And some of the gas would have to be processed offshore for re-export, because then we can process there in deep water conditions and ship it out. So the feasibility study, when you get to the project level, will determine how the final configuration of the project will be struck. But what will be clear is that however it's struck, we are looking to monetize the gas. So even if some comes onshore or some gets exported from offshore, we will be able to monetize our component of the gas that we own offshore, which is 50% of the gas that the government currently owns there. So that is the idea. It's the monetization, but we can't tell you what the project configuration to make that feasible, what that would be. That has to be determined after we select the preferred bidder, working with Exxon to come back to the government and say, this is what we have done. So that is why the strategy will be more of a high-level strategy, which speaks about the monetization of the gas, all that is possible to do with the gas, but not say, this is the particular project we're working on, because that has to be privately driven. We're not putting money into this. This is a massive project. It could be between $20 to $30 billion project. So we are not co-investing there. We are looking just to monetize our share of the gas, to get money for our country, more revenue for our country, rather than have it sit out there and not be utilized at all.
Just a quick follow-up on the first question
and
about...
the bilateral partners, yes, we talk to people all the time. So some of them may very well be putting in a request for proposal here to participate in this. But with IHS Market and some of our bilateral partners, some of them who are in gas could be our competitors too. So we have to make sure that we take advice, but we also seek independent advice.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
Just a quick follow-up on the first question. Regarding the newcomers, with respect to auctions, based on my research, governments usually depend on attracting a lot of the core international companies. And we do have some of that part of the lot, but you also have some newcomers. How does government view the emergence of new players? Does it inspire a level of confidence? Are you more cautious? What's the approach to ensuring that the newcomers succeed?
So the reason, you know, we've had to navigate a very complex environment here. So at the beginning, you remember Kaichor News saying we were giving all these locals who had no experience, and they were just turning around and flipping the blocks. They're making money, and the government was just handing out these blocks right in the past that were signed in the past. So they were against that, basically, that you give people with no experience blocks and that they turn and flip. On the other hand, the same newspaper and many others were saying, where are the opportunities for the locals? Locals, you're giving everything to the foreigners, the locals are not getting. So how do you ensure both objectives at the same time? And that is why we said, let's put a signing bonus, a substantial signing bonus at the beginning, but don't bar anyone from tendering. So we could have easily gone for a rigid tendering system which says you have to have 30 years experience in producing, you have to be a company with experience in deep water before you bid for either one of the deep resources, you know, the blocks in the deep. If we had done that, not a single local company would have been able to qualify to bid. Then we would have been accused of excluding locals. On the other hand, if we just give the locals, they would say, oh, they're flipping it. So that is why we don't have a problem now. If the locals who got involved, they seek out partners and they make resources. They took the effort to bid and they have to pay an upfront signing bonus of $10 million and $20 million for the deep block, the block in the deep. So that's more to explore only than we got from a production agreement when Exxon was going to produce. When in 2016 they signed an agreement with an 18 million signing bonus, when we already had 3 billion barrels of oil proven reserves, and they were moving to a production license away from an exploration license. And now to just explore, you have to pay $20 million. So whether a local company wants to flip it or not, I think it's fair that they are making an effort to invest, and if they can do that and make money, then that's fine. But because they bear a substantial risk too of not being able to do that. So it's navigating these two variables that allow us to come up to this, and we want to work with these people. These are our people too. So we hope to work with them to see that they succeed too. So that is why we've approached this. You notice now we're not hearing much about that from Kaichor. That would be the early days, about a contradictory kind of approach. And now we're going to hear from another. I'm sure we hear from Kaichor. All right, go quickly. Yes, go quickly. Yeah.
Just take you back to the gas. Trinidad has the Prime Minister has offered to help Guyana monetize its gas through its gas infrastructure. I heard you mention about feasibility study to see if it's viable. Will the government consider conducting such a study to see if taking the gas to Trinidad is cheaper?
So you have to read between the lines too. I just explained the gas, how we are hoping to structure the gas strategy. High level, without getting into details as to which the final configuration of the project. So when that is done by the people who have to find the resources to develop this, we're not finding the resources, and I doubt Trinidad will be finding those resources. So it's going to be privately driven, and we will get our revenue from it. So when that is done, they will obviously look at that too. If it's cheaper to take the gas to Trinidad and monetize it, then and maybe process it, then we will encourage that option to be looked at too. And to bring gas from Suriname would also, if they ever have a project, would also be looked at. But right now, that is not something that we're doing. Even if we say, oh, it's okay to take the gas to Trinidad, we can't get a project between government of Guyana and Trinidad. You have to get the investors to make that decision who are going to be putting in their money, $20 to $30 billion, including Exxon. If it comes out, so that is the approach we're taking. So it is something that will be examined, but the timing of it has to coincide with when we're moving forward with the project.
Moving away.
And in fact, Exxon is still in the stage of identifying how to make this work, because they have done already appraisals in the western part of the fields to see how much gas can come from there. And then they're doing some other appraisals. They're looking at Haimara and Pluma. So we have already had discussions on that, including talk about how we fill the other pipeline that we have. This pipeline here with the remaining 70 million cubic per day or so.
Okay. The Public Procurement Commission had wanted to review the tendering process for a contract, 800 million pump station contract. Was those documents handed over to the public? I think it's the company that Critic is a part of.
Yes. So the last time I spoke on this matter was maybe several months ago. I had a report at that time from the Minister of Finance. In fact, he gave a report to the Ministry of the Cabinet that all the documents, except in one document which he committed, would be sent over. Not on this project, but all the documents requested by the Public Procurement Commission had been handed over. So that was my last report. I have not followed it because now the matter is with the PPC and they're looking into the matter there. So it may be good to ask Minister of Finance, because if there is any further request of the ministry, I'm not aware that there is a further request. And that was the last position I had when he said at that time all the documents that were requested by the Public Procurement Commission had been handed over.
Can you say if it's true that he was, there's some allegations circulating that he was handed the 130 million mobilization fund, but he hasn't done any work on the ground as yet?
No, if it's an allegation, it couldn't be an allegation. It could be it's either he got the fund or not. So I don't, now mobilization advance is a standard part of every contract. So if the contract document If that is there in his document, it will be for every pump station and almost every other contract that's signed by the government of Guyana. So when people receive a mobilization advance, they have to secure it against a bank document so that if they don't utilize it for the project and they run away with it, then the government can go to the insurance company or the bank that guarantees it, basically. So that's a standard practice for every contract. So it's not unusual in this case if it was done. So I don't see why that would be a problem.
Just following up on that as well, if he doesn't make progress with his contract, we know the government
No, that's hypothetical. That's hypothetical. If he doesn't, that's a different matter. That's hypothetical. I dealt with you on the principle of a mobilization advance, which is a standard thing in a bidding document and a contract.
Are there any other secret contract that was given to him? And the reason why I'm asking is because on his...
Secret contract? What do you mean by secret contract?
Well, the reason I'm asking this is because on his morning live, he says that the Ministry of Housing owes him money, but there's nothing in the public to say he has any business with Ministry of Housing.
I guess they did a tender, they awarded it, but I don't know if it's a secret contract or not. So you have to ask him. Why don't you ask him? You could call him and ask him if he got a secret contract, or the minister. Yeah.
At the energy conference, Guyana was...
on a secret contract, who said that he didn't receive any money?
He himself, at his morning live,
Yeah,
he says Ministry of Housing owes him money.
That's a great secret contract that he got. If I got a secret contract, I would not say I didn't receive money on this secret contract.
Wasn't made aware if he had any business with them.
Yeah, but the media is not aware of everything, lots of things, and often because of their incompetence in some cases, and lots of times because of the distortion. They ignore the positive things. So that's not an excuse. So find out from him if he has a secret contract, and Colin Crowell if he has a secret contract.
Sure, no problem.
Okay, all right.
At the energy conference, Guyana was urged by the Bahamian Prime Minister and others to consider renewable energy as an affordable and stable option. But the minister, our oil minister, explained that it's too expensive to move over to renewables. What is the government plan to utilize renewable energy or add it to the national grid in the future? What's the plan to?
Well, it's not just expensive, it's a pace of deployment. It's the pace of deployment. So when you do, when you look at like the hydro, so the hydro is skilled, you understand that. If we had the hydro that's renewable, by 2017 the hydro would have been producing. So we would have had power already. APNU killed that. So let's forget that for a moment. We're now trying to get the project going again. But that's the biggest component of renewable energy. We don't have the resources or the wind resources at this point in time based on current examination to switch to wind in a large scale. And remember, wind is intermittent too. So there are times when it stops. So if you install 1 megawatt of wind turbine, and the wind slows down and the turbine stop, then you have to have a backup of 1 megawatt of fossil fuel to pick that up. In the period, it may stop for 10 minutes or 20 minutes, but at that time it's not generating. So that is why it's not capacity, it's just energy. You need a capacity to back that up. The same thing with solar. Solar, if 4 days the sun doesn't shine and you don't have battery power, then even if you do have battery power, the batteries run down. You don't have the power. And if you just do a grid tie-in, which is cheaper, the grid tie-in is without batteries. So you just put the solar, you use it during the day. So that's cheaper. You'll probably get it from maybe 6-7 cents per kilowatt hour. Cheaper now. But what happens in the cloudy days? You don't get that. and you don't have the battery. Now, if you add battery to that, the battery is very expensive to store. So you will get that around maybe 12, 13, 14 cents per kilowatt hour. We'll be generating at 4 cents per kilowatt hour from the gas. So you understand the cost. Short Young said $14 billion it will take to move to renewable. Globally, you need $2 trillion per annum to move to renewable energy and to displace fossil fuel. That came out of COP. Where is that money coming from? Who's going to get that money? And that's what the world is saying. You don't have renewable energy growing at the pace to displace growing demand, global demand for energy, to satisfy growing demand for energy. That is why you continue to have a growth in fossil fuel production, because people are not going to say we're not going to use the energy. And if it's not coming from renewable, it has to come from some other place. So it's all good to talk about renewable energy, but when you look at the dynamics, you tell me here, and gas does cut emissions level by 50% from bunker C and diesel, which is what we're using. So it's cleaner. But you tell me what we're going to do in that circumstance. Remember, I'd asked, there were some writings about that in Kaichor News. A number of people were saying, why not go solar? And Glenn Lal said he could have 24 hours power at 3 cents per kilowatt hour. 24 hours power. We asked him to come up with a proposal. He never showed up. Because it's good to talk about that a lot, but then when you go down to the practicalities of it, it's very different matter. Yes?
On the oil and gas, for ExxonMobil, Guyana says that Guyana is getting 52% profit from the oil. Can you say if this is true, and how are they arriving at 52% profit that Guyana is taken from the oil?
Well, it's, first of all, you have to exclude the part that goes back to amortize the investment. If you try to remove that, we get 14.5 percentage point of the 25 that remains. That's over 50% of the profit oil. The rest of it, 75%, goes towards amortizing the cost. When those costs are amortized, so if fully, then we get 50% of the total proceeds, all the profit. So say 100% now goes to profit oil. Of all your revenue goes to profit oil because you finish amortizing the investment, right? Paying back for the investment. So now 100% of your revenue is available for distribution, not 25%. We'll get 50% and they will get 50%. Then they will get 50%, but then we have a 2% royalty off the top. So effectively we will get 52, they will get 48.
Okay, since we're on the topic, my final question.
But I see you all had a big ad about it. That is useless, stupid. I don't understand. You make Kaichor News look bad. Well, worse. I can't say bad, right? But it is like a child writing this stuff. I was hoping to get Glenn Lal do a presentation there at the oil and gas conference. I was looking forward to him going to make a presentation with all his TikTok and all the erudite and smart comments that he would go TikTok in a conference, and then people just laugh at him because he knows nothing. And then where people are serious there, they know about the industry. Could go and talk about ring fencing there, ring fencing, depletion policy, all of that, renegotiation. Go on.
The
Sorry
final
to
question.
interrupt you.
But just before I go to the question, I see it has paid advertisements. I don't know if it's he or who put it in there.
Oh.
I don't know who put the ad in there.
He
It has
paid
paid
for it himself now. You know Glenn Lal. Is Glenn Lal only put that there? I hope he's paying taxes then on, if it's paid, he has to pay, I think, a VAT on it too. Check if he's paying the VAT.
Okay, final question. Will Guyana ever receive 50-50 profit from full 50/50 with the costs recovered and everything?
Yeah, I think, but it comes in the outer years. It comes in the outer years.
How many barrels will be left? How many oil will be left at that time, or?
I think if you look at the revenue growth profile, because it's two things are, there's several moving parts. That's why I was saying to you. So if people look at straight line FPS, so calculate the number of barrels, they look at number of barrels, they look at price, these are the variables. The number of barrels are, remember, each well or each development has a different profile. So some will peak, some will start declining, some now on the ascendancy. So that's why you need to add that in the financial model, that's variable. Secondly, you have to look at the rate of payback of the investment. So if the model was run, the original model was run on $50 per barrel, and we're earning $75 per barrel, the payback period is shorter. And that's what we're seeing now. So when you add those two variables, if you look at the current rate, that's why you see a steep escalation in the, maybe in 2-3 years time in the revenue flow to the country. So this is a constantly changing model. It's a dynamic model. It can't be a static model. And this is what, when you have a financial model before you, you can put in different assumptions. So what you want is for me to speak on a static basis. But these things change all the time. And so what may be, if the oil prices jump to say $130 a barrel, oh, we can pay back for these investments almost within a couple of years. If it declines to $30 a barrel, it takes longer because the financial model was on about $50 a barrel. So that's the variable that keeps changing, and it changes on every shipment. It changes for every shipment because it's what the market price is. So it's not a static model, and even sometimes the technical people have a hard time keeping track of this because it's so dynamic. And that is what I urge you to, it's not straightforward, Glenn Lal, kind of approach on these matters. Sometimes there's more complexity to these matters. That's why people go to universities and spend years to study these things, and sometimes still they have a hard time. They have a hard time understanding these models. Yes, please.
I just want to follow up on the same energy security issue that was discussed. You spoke about what's being done, what's possibly going to happen in terms of gas and collaborating with Trinidad and so forth. What I wanted to know is, currently or in the immediate future, what measures or processes are we working towards in terms of collaborating with the Caribbean region to ensure energy security in the region?
So energy security for the region also has to be looked at in the context of affordability and competitiveness. Right now, we have we're entitled to a number of barrels of crude as part of profit oil. We sell those the crude, basically through a marketing arrangement that we have that's publicly tendered at the prices in a particular benchmark. That's what we have. We don't refine products here. The demand for the region is for refined products, not for crude, except Trinidad and Tobago, which has a refinery there, a refinery. But most of the other countries, they have a need for refined products. We don't do refined products. So that excludes everything else except the Trinidad refinery. That refinery has been mothballed since 2018. And we are not in the, we don't know what it will take right now to rehabilitate that and to bring it into production, and whether that is the most cost-effective thing to do or feasible thing to do, especially in light of people being able to import fuel from other sources that are very competitive and don't pay the common external tariff. Refineries that might be much more efficient and that have more established shipping lanes. So like from North America, etc. So at this stage, you could talk about it like how we talk generally about regional transport links. But look how long we've been talking about this for 30 years. But the reason it's not taking off, because when you come to work out the practicalities, who will own the vessels? How much will it cost to buy the vessels? How often would these vessels run? Is it cost effective to do that? Then you can't get private interest of a major magnitude. So some things are good to talk about in a general sense, but we will constantly look at opportunities to participate. Like I do believe there are synergies between Trinidad, Guyana, Suriname, and that's why we're always leaving open the possibility of collaborating in these areas, because they can deal more with the production and processing of gas and oil, etc. The other countries are smaller and they have more demand for refined products. So we'd have to look at in the future maybe how we can assist with those. That is why the Prime Minister of Bahamas was right that they have to look at more renewable energy, because for them solar might be a bigger option. The solar, particularly grid tie-in, and then eventually, because they don't have the gas, like their own gas stove, to generate power, or hydro potential.
I'm speaking more in the context you talk about our oil share and the need for...
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the only way we can collaborate now.
So the possibility would only exist when that our oil share increases? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying
refining.
It's not the quantum. It's not the quantum. I'm talking about we get our oil in the form of crude. That has to be processed. And then the region demand is for processed oil that they can buy. That's diesel, gas, bunker, whatever they use. We don't produce that in Guyana, and our share of the oil doesn't come in that form. We could do tolling, maybe explore. People are saying at some stage when we become more sophisticated, maybe we just have our crude be tolled in a refinery somewhere and brought back as refined products to Guyana. We may be able to cut our costs, etc. But that, as you get more crude and as you get more sophisticated.
And my second question is on the upcoming PPP Congress. I tie it in with government's invite to the EU for observation for the 2025 general elections. I wanted to know, as General Secretary of PPP, Are you open to observers of your party's elections?
Yeah, we don't generally, we have observers. So the delegates themselves, because this is an internal thing, the delegates can choose observers, they can go in, they process the voting, and the voting is done in the open, because everybody sit down and they take off. That's open, they put it in a box, and then it goes into a room, and people are there, tons of people. So it's fine. But we're not going to have, you want APNU to send in observers for us? APNU wants to give us thing. We have an open system. You don't go in a booth and you vote and all of that. You have a big open hall. People get their ballot paper. They look at it there. They just sit down and vote. And then they go around with boxes and they put these in. And then they go and count the ballots. And then you have selected people who can observe it from regions, etc. to count.
Party,
Yes,
not
yes,
externally.
within the party, because that's where we have to ensure that the democracy is done, within the party.
No
You
external.
ask APNU if they want
I know you would have
external
said that,
advisors.
but I'm going to
Yeah, you
ask
know I was
you.
gonna say.
You want to measure your party with APNU, the very APNU that
Okay,
you
no,
said.
no, yes, yeah. But I can put it to the Congress. That's not a decision for the General Secretary of the party. We can put it there to the Congress.
Mr. Jagdeo, is the government surprised that the GPS... Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes. The motorcycle just came by.
Is the government surprised that the GPSU has issued an ultimatum to meet at the negotiation table or face industrial action? Secondly, does it come as a surprise that this comes at a time when the GTU is engaged in an illegal industrial action? Thirdly, have the criteria been met to facilitate any industrial action by the GPSU?
I know that there's been a correspondence between the GPSU and the Ministry of Labor. I saw a letter where they asked for, they lost confidence in the Chief Labor Officer. And I would hope that you look at that. I asked the ministry that they should reveal the correspondence to the media to see what they wrote him on. And I think I have somewhere a copy of this correspondence where I might have left it. Yes, I have it here. So they wrote on the February 19, 2024, wrote the union, the Chief Labor Officer, and he responded on the 21st of February. And it would be interesting to look at his response. I don't want to go into it, belabor it. And what he did, he went to the Solicitor General and he asked the Solicitor General whether, this is what I just read the Solicitor General's advice to the Chief Labor Officer. So, dear Mr. Dearnoan, advice on whether claim, and it states a claim, in the matter of the Guyana Public Service Union versus Attorney General of Guyana and Permanent Secretary of Public Service Ministry is duly before the Supreme Court. Having perused the caption matter, we are of the considered opinion that the Guyana Public Service Union have elected to engage the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court and has sought several orders in the said matter, inclusive of an order directing the Permanent Secretary and the Attorney General to enter into meaningful negotiations with the Guyana Public Service Union. In effect, the Guyana Public Service Union is seeking the exact remedy in its request for conciliation with your office. In all respectful opinion, the court is duly and properly engaged to determine this issue, and you should yield to the court's jurisdiction. So they went to the court on the same matter and that they're now raising about conciliation and to direct the ministry to engage with them. It's before the court, and now they give an ultimatum to proceed with a strike, contrary or in violation of the case that they have before the Supreme Court, seeking the same remedy. And I'm not going to go into any great detail about this, about whether the grievance procedures have been met, because in their own ultimatum, they conceded that the grievance procedures have not been exhausted. I just had a look at it, and they're still to consult with their members, but they're giving this ultimatum. I think it's opportunistic, it's convenient, it's linked with what I've said before, that with a connection with APNU, it's going to be if they call a strike, it's going to be political, and therefore we'd have to deal with it accordingly. But please look at the flow of correspondence between the GPSU and the Ministry of Labor, the Chief Labor Officer.
Good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo and Ross Williams, Kaichur News.
Kaichur again.
Sir, following
I
up
was hoping
on...
to wrap up. I thought I had a good day. Yeah. All right, go.
Following up on regional energy security, you mentioned that the only way we will basically be able to help our neighbors is if we have the oil, our crude, or share of the crude told to a refinery. My question to you is, if government comes to that decision to have this done, how many of the 645,000 barrels we're currently producing daily would government be willing to donate to ensure that regional energy security prevails? And additionally, can you say how much of that current 645,000 is Guyana getting? Secondly, last week you said Exxon has $20 billion in assets out there which can be sold to take care of an oil spill in the event that it occurs. Can you list the assets they have that equals the value of this $20 billion?
Okay. That's it. You have any more?
Additionally,
I'm just being generous with you now. Yeah, go. Right.
You said we have a $2 billion guarantee. You would agree with us that Exxon has a track record of being dishonest in their dealings with other countries. In light of this, have you seen the guarantee for yourself, and are you comfortable with the terms, if any, attached?
Okay. Go on. Go on.
That's it.
That's it? No, I have not. I said this is an EPA matter. I have not seen the guarantee. The EPA has assured us you have to understand jurisdiction. The EPA has assured us that the guarantee is in a manner that is enforceable, and I believe the government agencies. This was negotiated. They had their lawyers involved, and therefore it is in that manner. The second thing is, if I got to list the assets of Exxon, have you read the balance sheet? Have you gone to the financial statements and look at the balance sheet? You should look at that. You should look at that. I have to list every asset they have, and considering something else. We talk about the book value of the assets. Let me just give you an idea. You've heard about the merger between Chevron and Hess, the announced merger. Do you know what's the value of that Hess, the Hess company was valued at? Do you know? You don't know. It's $60 billion. $60 billion. So the Hess assets are made up mainly of 30% shares in Guyana and some assets in the Permian area. So take half of it. Say of their global assets, half are in Guyana. It's much more than half. But say half of the 60 billion is $30 billion. That's the valuation. That effectively means that a 70% of the remaining assets, crudely, would be about $70 billion. So in the market values not just the assets that are listed, but they look at the recoverable reserves, everything else. It's an intangible. You don't see it. Glenn looking to see which it's called intangibles. But it has a value, recoverable value, and that will bring in future years a stream of benefits that would equal way beyond its valuation. And that is how companies are often valued on a stock exchange, etc. So effectively, if you use just crudely the value that Chevron placed on Hess shares in Guyana, you have a $100 billion company in Guyana. Here. That's the value of all the shares because they value 30% of it, 30% of the local company at minimum $30 billion because I'm just taking out half of what they have for their global assets. You all got to look at these things too. You got to look at the balance sheet and to understand how valuation is done, etc. So Glenn Lal saying, oh, sell the old iron. Old iron that you got to say. Somebody tell me he said he had something we could sell the old iron to cover this spill and stuff like that. Now let me tell you something further. That long before all of this has happened, the spill in Tobago, we've been working to have legislation in place, and those will come before probably before the recess, to cover all sorts of liabilities. A law in place, like they have in the US and some other countries, that will cover also transportation because we have more crude being transported in our jurisdiction. So it's not just liabilities of the oil companies, but transport companies, etc. And that's been in the works a long time, because so that we can protect this country, that we can protect Guyana. Oh, the toll. I didn't say that we're tolling. I said these are hypotheticals and how
Decides to take
yes,
that path.
If we go, we have to, first of all, we got to look at, is it feasible? So take, you're asking me how much of this we're getting. All this is in the budget. Calculate, this is in the budget, how much our share of the oil for this year, how much we'd be entitled to. So how many lifts of 1 million barrels, etc. It's really, crudely putting, if you look at a static model now, it's 14.5% of total production. 14.5% of total production, crudely put. Right? Not, well, crude, the word crude, but generally put in a static model. So you just calculate what that will be. It's easy to do. I shouldn't have to do that. Secondly, if we decide to toll, we have to look at what the tolling charges would be, how much the shipping charges to take our crude and bring it back, and then see if the final product could be competitive versus just buying refined products from elsewhere. That's only when it decides. How much will be given to the region for free for regional security? You tell me how much. You think we can do that with Norton and the others there? Next thing they run around and say, oh, PPP giving away the fuel to all the people in the region, in the Caribbean, and we have poor people and stuff. You tell me how much we must give, what share of it. That if the people of Guyana will want us to do that, how much we'll give to the region for regional energy security. You tell us how much per day we must give, how many barrels per day we must give for that. It would be interesting.
I'll get back to you on a number.
Huh?
I'll get back to you on a number.
Well, thank you very much. I would appreciate that. And please solicit the view of the leader of the opposition. How much must he give him for free? All right, thank you.
One final thing.
Oh, and I'll just send you something there. All right.
No,
All
I
right.
missed something in my notes. So
no.
there have been some stories going around in relation to Equatorial Guinea. So after about 3 decades of operating in Equatorial Guinea, ExxonMobil basically left the country, burst in initially when they got there, to fully focused on Guyana. What are your concerns about this?
You think the people of Equatorial Guinea agree with that? That the country was worse off today than when Exxon got there? Who told you that? I was in Equatorial Guinea a few times. I saw changes. It would have been worse. You still have lots of issues. I went 2 times to Equatorial Guinea, one when I was part of a vice chair of the EU, the ACP Eminent Person Group. Obasanjo, the president of Nigeria, was chairing the group, and we had to come up with this report about the future of the ACP. I was there to present that, and then on another occasion. So when I'd left office, and I was the envoy for the 3 forest basins, so I went through Africa, so I had lots of discussions there. I don't think the people of Equatorial Guinea will agree with you that they're worse off today than in the past. But the thing is that utilization of the resources that a country gets is within the purview of government. So if we choose to use every cent we collect from Exxon to pay wages or salaries or build palaces or just splurge on everything, hand out money everywhere, we may very well be worse off when they leave too. We've chosen to invest in education, in healthcare, in infrastructure, in resilience, that is to climate change, in sustainability by diversifying the economy to create future wealth, in creating non-oil jobs, so that we will be better off in the future when we stop producing oil. A lot has to do with country. And since we're talking about that, Gordon Mosley came to the Marriott and asked me about this spill. And I said to him yesterday, yes, he came there and he brought his camera to my face, and I said to him, we will get GPL to release all the information. I think GPL has put out a press release now about the process they went through and the companies that won the bids. But we maintain that GPL has absolutely no liability to any of those, as you've seen. And all of this information, President Ali shared with the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. Told me that. I spoke with Prime Minister Rowley up to yesterday, and we shared everything that we have, all the information. So that is, I see they said, some man said, I sourced the fuel from Venezuela. I get blamed for everything, that I brought in the fuel from Venezuela. I negotiated everything in this world. I think it starts with the Kaichur. Kaichur has done that to me. Now I bring in the fuel. I bring it from Venezuela. These people are ridiculous. Yes.
Just in case the oil spill, are they all of them owned by the local companies here or by the parent
Yeah,
companies?
so the assets, they're significant part. So not every bit of asset is owned, but the valuation of, I just dealt with the valuation of the company too. So, as I said before, people discount that. They focus on the 600 million and the 2 billion. That is the point I was getting at. And they ignore the growth in this company, and it's growing constantly with bigger investments all the time. That is also at our disposal to tackle an oil spill too. That's the point I was trying to get. So I wasn't dealing with a determined valuation to say 12 billion or 14 billion, because book value would be different than market value. You just heard about the market value that is established by the stock exchange. So some assets may be, says, if they're leased, then the assets would belong to the people who lease them. But a lot of Exxon has if you read the balance sheet, you can see this. That's why I'm saying I shouldn't be doing your work. You want me to do your work.
No,
All
no,
right,
I
that's
understand
it.
that.
I gave you a chance to raise that. Thank you.